I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the fire building in the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay.
610B. That was the mayday. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Coming up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows vented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the 4th floor. Second line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
Hey, welcome back to our show, Old School. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my good buddy, Chief John Salka. And as always, we feel we've got another great topic for you. Another one kind of off the cuff. John, I always know, I can always put, as much as we talk almost every day, several times a day, I know we're kind of goofy that way, but I can always tell when I answer the phone and you go, okay, you know why I'm calling you. Did you see what so-and-so posted on Facebook about themselves? And, we talked about the Chiefs that have, or the guys that have the 9-foot arms from patting themselves on the back and all that stuff. But, Leo Stapleton, our friend, how much did you love Leo?
Great guy. Great guy.
Leo Stapleton, for our listeners, retired as one of the commissioners in Boston years ago. He just passed away. What a jewel of a man! What a gentleman! He was one of those tough bosses, John. You talked about in that one show we did.
Oh, absolutely.
But oh my God, there was something about him that you couldn't help but learn from him, and you talk about a guy who was the opposite of egos eat brains. You know what I'm saying? He was always in search of more knowledge and everything. But in his book, one of his many books, he had like 35 books, remember, John, the book of 30 Years on the Line, which is one of my favorites from him. There was a chapter, I think the chapter was I ever really that smart? And he's talking as a lieutenant about the young firefighter came in the door and knew everything. And you and I've said this oodles of times before, that if you ever get to a point in this business where you think you know everything, it's time to get your bass boat. It's time to get your golf clubs and hang up your boots as a volley and leave. So when you think of somebody, or when you see somebody, or somebody's talking about somebody thinks they know it all, what are the thoughts that are going through your head? We'll start things off that way with this.
Right. And don't get us wrong. If you're listening, don't get us wrong. It's great when you got a couple of years on a job and you're starting to click and you're starting to get good with tools and you're starting to turn out faster and have a little better understanding maybe of what's going on at jobs beyond maybe your task level stuff that you're getting good at. Or you're a young officer with 10 years on a job, maybe just a couple of years in the front seat, and you're starting to feel good. You're starting to get your legs. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about those guys. We're not talking about these. We're not talking about these levels, these pinnacles that you reach as you're going through your career, as you become a senior firefighter, or maybe a driver operator, or maybe a young officer, or maybe a senior officer. But there are people out there, and they're in every industry. They're not just in the fire service. There's cops like this. There's people that work in every industry like this, that however it is and whenever it is that they reach some kind of a level, some kind of a plateau, it's like they got it, and they put it into neutral, and they're just gliding on what they know, which is not nothing, because they couldn't get where they were knowing nothing, but they're not continuously improving, which is really, I guess that's really the point that we're trying to make here, that no matter who you are, whether you're Leo Stapleton with 40 years on the job and you're the commissioner and chief of department, or whether you're some guy in Engine 4 in North Charleston that's got 3 years on a job, there's 100 million opportunities to learn and read, and everybody doesn't have to put on their bicycle glasses and sit down next to the fireplace and start reading every night. But there's 1,000 ways to learn stuff, and you should be learning stuff. I mean, if you can't learn something every time you put that uniform on, if you can't learn one thing every time you go down to the firehouse for drill night or for a drill or maybe even for a run, right, then you're doing something wrong. You and I talked about it. We both have 40 plus years in the fire service. We're both traveling around. We're still active in the volleys in our communities, but we're still traveling around the country talking to people. And I come home every time with little notes, notes in my pocket with stuff scribbled on them, and then from stuff that I heard from the speaker ahead of me or behind me, or listening to you, or having a conversation with somebody.
Well, exactly. And I want to go back to something that you just said that you made me think of this. And you've heard me mention this a bunch of times before, when you said, it's not we're not talking about when you reach a plateau at each level as a firefighter, a company officer, or whatever, because there's different levels of fire service maturity, I guess it is. You hear me say this all the time. Don't confuse confidence for cockiness, and I'll just pick on myself. Don't confuse if I come off confident, like I'm in my abilities or what I'm looking at, for cockiness, because that's not it. You and I both talk about, again, egos eat brains, and I've used this saying, not to embarrass you, but I've used this saying about you when it comes to all your experience, John. 48 engine, never under 6,000 runs a year, the busiest unit, Rescue 3, Squad 1, 11. I mean, oh my God. I've never heard John Salka go, well, I know this and I know that, because the saying I use, and the one I like is, a lion doesn't have to tell you he's a lion. You know that. If you have to tell me about all your fires, not let's not talk a good job. Hey, remember that, John? And you go, I had a basement fire once, and Rick, these were the challenges. I'm not talking that. I'm talking the guy that reads you his resume every time you're around about, then I did this and I did that, and so on and so forth. So don't confuse folks' confidence for cockiness, but at the same time. And I mentioned this to you before, John. I remember seeing, I follow somebody on Facebook, like we all do. You were at a conference, and no, it was a TEACS leadership conference. It was the TEACS leadership conference in Frisco, I think. You had got done teaching, and somebody else was out on the stage doing their topic, and some guy took your picture. You're sitting in the front freaking row with your notebook taking notes, and you didn't know it. He snapped your picture kind of from the side, and he goes, so the guy's got 40 plus years in the fire service, the reputation that he has, which, you and I, we always laugh about that because we're just a couple of firefighters, what we do. He says he just got the teaching. Here he is, and he's in the front row, not back in his room having coffee. He's in the front row listening to another speaker, taking notes, learning something.
And you know what? And you know who I was sitting next to?
Who?
Denny Compton. He was there too, listening. It was a great.
Oh my God. Dennis Compton. Gee, if to our listeners, if you know who Chief Dennis Compton is, just Google his name. I just, and I said this the other day, during lunch, I was, oh God, I had such a good time. We were in Alabama, John. And then this past weekend, I was in Ohio, as well as where I flew into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My hotel was in West Virginia, and I taught in Ohio, because I'm right there, like in a little corner.
God almighty, your head must have been spinning.
But I was with the guys and gals from the Wellsville Volunteer Fire Department of Wellsville, Ohio. And you want to talk about, first of all, a great, John, you always talk about Birmingham. That's your measuring stick. Like, right. It was a great place, but it wasn't Birmingham, Alabama, because that was one of the best times you ever had. And we always said we've never had a bad class. These guys, Friday night, we had dinner with the guys at the fire hall. It was just shop talk, John, just talking stuff and shop. And then we had dinner after class. And during lunch, one of the guys came up, and he came up to ask the questions. Hang on a second, look at this. I was watching a video of a fire, and he goes, is that what you spend your lunchtime doing? I said, well, if I'm not talking to you guys, yeah. How do you call yourself good, confident, or a student of the fire service when you don't learn something every day about this job, right?
Right.
And talk about some of your mentors, some of the people that you admire the most were probably some of the guys that never stopped learning, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's, and everybody thinks we're sitting here talking about chiefs and we're talking about firefighters and lieutenants, and we're talking about Chris Delisio. We're talking about, how many guys have you and I worked with that, Mark Wesseldine, right? Guys like that are just, Mark Wesseldine I'd be sitting in the office after a good all hands. All of a sudden, I'd be knocking the door. I'd look up and be Mark. Hey, Chief, you got a minute? Yeah, what's up, Mark? Now, here's a guy that you and I travel around with.
Yeah.
A whole country doing hands-on training and seminars and lectures. He still calls us Chief, So I said, what's up? He says, listen, we were just having that conversation this morning. Remember the new blade that they gave the trucks to try out that we have, that new Gorilla blade or whatever it is, some blade with all sorts of big teeth in every direction around the edge of the blade, Anyway, he said, we just happened to be talking about that today. He said, I'll be damned. We used that today. Boy, was that good. We thought it was going to be good, but boy, did it really work good. I said, who's working today? The captain. He said, yeah. Well, make sure they include that on the recommendations so the job gets them. Our job sends stuff out. We try it first before they go buy some, And if they're junk, we don't get them. And if they're great, they do. And there's Mark Wesseldine, who's a chief now out in Colorado, retired firefighter, not lieutenant, retired firefighter, and he's a chief the second time around out there in Colorado.
Well, and so let me ask you this. Yeah, we're not talking just chiefs and company officers, we're talking firefighters too. I can't think of a great boss, a great lieutenant, a great company officer, captain, BC, whatever. I can't think of one of my mentors or just a great, when you and I go, God, that's a great, look at this guy. God, I wish he worked for me or worked for me, or I got to work for him. That when they were a firefighter, John, they weren't into the job. They were all into the job. They didn't get promoted and all of a sudden someone waved a magic company officer wand over your head with pixie
Nobody
dust.
does that. Nobody reinvents themselves when they make boss and get interested if they weren't interested as a firefighter.
Yeah, if they were crappy, when they're crap plus crap equals crap. I'm not the best at math like you are, but I know crap plus crap is crap squared or whatever. Anyway, exactly. You don't become a great, you're not a slug of a firefighter. You become a great company officer. In fact, you even have to take it up even further. How many times you heard me tell the story? This is great. All right, so before our FDIC advisory board meeting years ago, so me and Chief Bobby Halton, John Bobby, and Bruno, Alan Brunacini, Chief Bruno, our friend, God bless him, right? So we get in Bobby's car, John, and we're going to drive from Tulsa to Rogers, Arkansas, which is several hours to get there. And we're going to do a conference for the guys there, right?
I remember this story. I remember it's a great story.
So for our listeners, we're driving. So, John, I've told you this a bunch of times. So Bobby's driving. I'm in the front seat. Bruno's behind me. This is a guy that had 48 years at Phoenix, and 26 as chief. Then all the years after that. Oh my God, John! The whole way there, he kept tapping me on the shoulder, handing me his phone. Rick, read this article. Rick, watch this video. Can you believe that? Rick, look at this guy. Would you want this guy? And I looked at Bobby and I said, does he ever take a nap? Does he ever close? I mean, the guy, if anyone deserves 20 minutes off from learning, it's Alan Brunacini. And then it kind of hit me.
Take a breath,
Yeah. And then it hit me, John. That's why he didn't get that way. He didn't get that from sleeping in the corner on his iPhone all the time. He got, now, you know what I've noticed lately, because you and I talk about the iPhone stuff and all that. A lot of the guys and gals in class, they're not like watching YouTube videos about like fishing shows or drag racing. They're taking notes with their phone, or when you see them at break, they're doing the same thing. They're showing each other phones. Look at this video. This guy cutting his hole.
Right. They're not looking at the Yankee game. Yeah.
I think there's more and more of them that are becoming that student of the business that we're in, because we've said it 1,000 times before. There's no do-overs in the fire service. So besides all of our mentors that we talk about that just we're always learning people, think nowadays, John, about the resources. Back when we started, you subscribed to Fire Engineering Magazine, Firehouse Magazine, maybe Fire Chiefs Magazine if you're a chief. You went to FDIC, you went to Firehouse,
right,
to iChiefs, and that was it. You got in a car and you drove 7 hours, 3 hours to go see John Salka or Alan Brunacini, or nowadays, oh my God, the resources are incredible.
And you don't have to leave your dining room table or your front seat of your car or the firehouse kitchen, right?
Oh, exactly. I mean, you talk about you always refer to the iPhone as the Huckleberry. You get to pick up your Huckleberry, your iPhone, or whatever. But you mentioned a couple of them in a class we were at not too long ago. You mentioned firefighter close calls with Billy, as a resource. How there's lesson plans on there. There's videos. There's pictures. There's company quick drills. I mean,
all the magazines, right? All the magazines have websites. Fire Engineering, Firehouse. All the magazines have a website which have numerous pages and personalities, and you and me and Mike Champo, and everybody who's on there is on there, right? And then you have, like you said, close calls, near miss. What's his name? All the big names, and not even all the big names, but there's a lot of active guys out there. Billy Goldfeder and his partner got a couple of things out there, right? Everybody's got something out there. The IFSTA manual, folks. You can like or not like everything about those manuals, but those are it's still a great website. And never mind just Googling in. Never mind just going to Google and typing in firefighter. Just go to YouTube. Go to YouTube and watch videos. You can learn some stuff.
Well, you were just on a show, with the Get Salty guys, right? And,
Right.
and the Get Salty guys, the followership they have, the followership, and another group that's another show that you could watch and learn something. For some of these guys, we've said before, how many times, John, have people said, well, we're not a real busy fire department. How do I get the experience? And what do you always tell them?
Right. If you're not a big fire department, doesn't matter whether you do one fire a day or one fire every 6 months. You got to do it. You got to do it right, and you got to prepare. But you know what? It's a ridiculous thing to say because some people think you're full of shit. But the less fires you have, the more time you have for training. And that sounds ridiculous because everybody looks through their nose. And I tell the story in all our classes and all my classes, and I tell it up in the valleys here too. I said, I ask you a question. Can you get good? Maybe not great, but can you get good with just training and no experience? I see guys shaking their head. No. I said, what do you mean no? How can you do it without experience? I said, why don't you ask the Marines? My son joined the Marines, did 13 weeks in Paris Island. They came out ready to kill bad guys. They never shot a real bullet at a real enemy. They probably never left the island for 13 weeks. And they come out of there Marines. Now they're going to get better with experience. They're going to get better when they start going places and really doing stuff. But when they come out of that academy after 13 weeks, they are good. And you know what? You can do the same thing in your firehouse. You could be in a little village somewhere with $1 million houses. You might have to wait 2 years to go first do a fire. You can still be good. You can be running out there, pulling hose, like you said, pulling over at the playground on the way back from a run and having a guy pull out 3 lengths of hose to see if he can get to the jungle gym or the monkey bars, quickly and efficiently. So training is important. And not sometimes, if you looked at all the fire departments, 40,000 fire departments, how many are really, really, really busy? A couple of hundred, maybe, if that. Everybody else has got to train. You got to train to be good.
Well, and like you said, what is it? The more we sweat in training, the less we bleed in battle, was a saying from a long time ago.
Just like that. How true.
And then Gordon Graham, Billy Goldfeder's partner, Gordon Graham, longtime legend in risk management, everything, leadership. We use his saying. We use it in our leadership book. Every now and then, you have to sharpen the saw. Every now and then you have to sharpen your saw, and you don't do that. Now, I will say this, John, you made me think of something. You mentioned YouTube. It used to be really bad, and it's still there, where a lot of guys or a lot of bosses will beat up on their firefighters. Oh, you're on YouTube again? Are you on YouTube again? Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with watching the fire videos? As long as you're not commenting and making stupid comments and pointing fingers, because that, you know how that drives you and I crazy. The bullies and thugs that think they're perfect and they can make comments about, I can't believe those MNFers did this and that. I'm like, really? And you call yourself one of us? But God, I watch those videos and sometimes I go, you and I've sat there, haven't we? We went, oh my holy God, what are they doing? What are they doing?
Yeah.
But you don't comment on it, but you say to yourself, okay, what do I have to do to make sure that doesn't happen to me or my guys, right?
And you remember the old days? I think you could probably, to our listeners, you can probably Google this or go online and look for it. On the job was the old training program for the FDNY. Before I got on, I was on 33 years. I'm out 10. That's 43 years. So 43 years ago, it was on TV. It was you could find it on public television, and I think you can still dig it up. They're not making it anymore, obviously. But the point is, that's what we were watching back then. There were no computers. There was nothing online. There was no YouTube. But we were watching on a job to see if we could catch a little bit of a glimpse of 31 truck and 82 engine going to work down there or something like that. And that's what these new younger guys are doing. They don't do it exactly the same way we did it. I was going to say they don't have the same resources available. No, they don't. They get 100 times more resources available.
Well, and you hear me talk about, a bunch of our guys at Wichita West. We got a great fire department, great roster there at my Valley department. But we're talking about like some of the newer guys about the roof hooks, the FDNY roof hook and all-purpose hook that we're putting on all the rigs. And one of the new guys, Jim Byers, said, Jim Spears. Jimmy was an honor guard commander, Louisville. Jim Spears was like, so, about the differences and this and that. I was explaining things. I said, go to YouTube. There's like a bunch of a nice tightened up group of videos that are like 5 minutes long on the all-purpose hook versus the roof hook, which one, the likes of both, and what guys like, they prefer and all that. And they can show you all the different things. And he goes, yeah, I was watching this and watching that. So I really don't have a problem with the guys watching. In fact, I like that they're watching the fire videos and the training. God, there's like a gazillion, like you said, training videos out there. You know, every one of my mentors, you and I have said this before, you've heard me say it. What I admired most about the guys I had the privilege of hanging with, Chief Eddie Enright, Chief Jack McCassin, Chief Tom Freeman, Tommy Schervino, Ray Hoff, all those guys, is they loved the job so much you couldn't help but admire them. Right. Everybody likes to talk hunting and fishing once in a while, but these guys, like you and I, we get on a phone. The whole reason we started this show, we don't get paid to do this show. We started doing this because people are like, you guys ought to start recording those little things when you're sitting there going back and forth talking about engine versus truck and ventilation. We just love talking shop, and I love hanging around the guys.
And it's contagious. Oh, and we push it down the road. Like kicking the can down the road is a term for not doing something with something and kicking it down and making a decision later. But reverse that around. So you take a guy like Jay Jonas, who's been writing for now a couple of years, the 7th Division newsletter, right?
Oh, God.
It's actually a series of very technical, motivated articles about dramatic fire situations in the FDNY over the past 40 or 50 years. Every famous fire you ever knew about, and the 30 that you didn't know about. And where did he get the idea, Jay Jonas? Where did he get the idea for doing that? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Vinny Dunn. When Vinny Dunn was a division commander in the 3rd Division, he used to write a little newsletter every month about this and about that, about training tips and hazards firefighters face and successful operations that they had. He picked it up from Vinny. He even called him up and said, "Hey, Vinny, it's Jay Jonas. Hey, Jay, hey." He said, "Listen, I'm thinking about resurrecting what you did. I'm sort of calling this for permission. I don't want you to think I'm sort of, using it." He said, "No, by all means do it." So there's Vinny Dunn started something that Jay Jonas picked up, 15, 20 years later, and now he's doing it. Jay's getting ready to retire. Don't you think somebody might? Don't you think somebody in the 7th Division or the 6th Division or the 3rd Division might pick up on that same idea? And you can see how when you're into the job, you sort of you promote it with the people around you. We've said that 100 times.
Well, and I just checked my folder because I keep a copy of all those. And I may not have every one, but I'm pretty close. You know me. There's 74. Now, that may seem like a lot to some people, that have like 1,000 podcasts because they do them on like how to empty the garbage and everything. 74 of Jay's newsletters, the amount of work that he goes through to put each one together, the interviews, the research, and he is absolutely spot on with his details and accuracy. Accuracy is, Jay, he's like,
these are multi-page. These are 5 and 10 page articles with photographs. He goes to the FDNY photo unit. They know him. How you doing, Chief? Good. Listen, I'm looking up this fire. It was in all hands. It was box 3428. It was in 1957, 3rd Avenue in the Bronx. I know that a firefighter got killed, and also the guy sends them electronically. He sends them 20 pictures, and somehow either the photo unit has done it, but they cleared them up. They make them look like they were taken with a cell phone, like last year. And then he goes to the first 2 companies. He goes into the file cabinet. He pulls out the fire report. He writes down the first 2 lieutenants' name, the nozzle firefighter, the backup firefighter. It's all in the reports. So when he writes this article, he says engine 48 arrived at the scene and commanded by Lieutenant John Skelly. And, he pulled a 2.5-inch line and, Fireman Carbone and Fireman Wright pulled the line, the nozzle and backup. You feel like you're at the fire when you read it. And boy, does he put time in. He's got what, 76, you said?
70. Well, I have 74. So it's right there. I think it's 74.
74, detailed multi-page stories with pictures. And then he not only does that, then he does, following the report, he talks about lessons learned. He makes every one a training event. Lessons learned about pre-connected lines, about 2.5-inch hose, about backing up the firefighter properly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just another example of somebody that's into the job and doesn't know everything. He keeps researching and looking stuff up all the time. 43 years on the job.
Well, and you and I've said this, just when you think, okay, I think I've got this whole firefighting job down, you and I go somewhere, we look at each other, go, I never knew that, or that, wow, that's a different way, or what, you know what I'm saying? There's a million things out there that I don't know. It's more than a million.
And not just technical. I go to a racket. I go to a parade. I go to a reunion, and I'm talking to an older guy from Rescue 3 or from 3rd Division, and And also he tells me, oh yeah, those we had the second sections. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands of guys on the FDNY right now, wearing the patch, going to fires, that don't know there were second sections in the FDNY. Now, listen, I understand everybody who's in the fire service doesn't have a grasp or a taste for history like you and I do, and lots of other people do. But it's nice to know the history of your own department. Second sections and tactical control units, TCUs, truck 712, engine 512. These weren't second sections, but they would go into a firehouse and ride in the evening hours in front of a busy truck and take all the runs in and give them a little bit of a break, and then they would disappear at like midnight or something like that, go out of service. That'd be the end of their shift. They come back the next night. The point is, even stuff about everybody's job, St. Louis, Missouri, Wichita, wherever it is you work, there's probably stuff about your fire department. Oh, engine 2 used to be in with engine 1, really? Yeah, for 10 years when that firehouse burned down. I just find that interesting to know about your own town, your own fire department, or maybe the fire department in general.
Well, and it's just, the history is incredible. The information is unbelievable. Like I said, and John, I've done it before. Who taught me? All right, go to YouTube. Terry McGrath, our good buddy, Assistant Chief Terry McGrath for Louisville. He's going to be on our Hump Day hangout with us, right? Terry's been with us a long time. I call him Elroy Jetson, because he's like so freaking smart. I'll call Terry. He'll go, well, I found this on YouTube. Dude, I'm like, oh. So I remember calling him once, going, okay, I just want to let you know, I pulled a Terry. I pulled an Elroy. I went to YouTube. I found a video, and I actually went out and did it with my hands. I mean, I watched the video. They told me how to do it, and I fixed it by myself. I mean, the stuff's out there. You mentioned, when we were talking before a class ago about firefighter close calls, and then you talk about the webinars, the podcasts, the websites, the apps on your phone, the videos, the books, the magazine articles. You can go to Fire Engineering Magazine. John has every article they ever published since they started as Fireman's Journal in 1877. If you subscribe to our readers, if you subscribe to Fire Engineering, again, they were called the Fireman's Journal from 1877. They started, and I think they were actually doing 2 articles a week back then, or 2 issues a week. You can read articles in the 1800s, and you know what's scary, John? You think they were written yesterday. You know what?
Same stuff, right?
Oh yeah. So the information's there. So again, yes, we're talking visualizing, learning, and cognitive skills, but you could take what you're watching, what you're reading, and you could apply it to your psychomotor, the skills, the hands-on. You could take what you read and what you learn and go out and do it and practice it. How many guys have seen one picture of an Andy Fredericks door chock, right? The Andy door chock. They just saw the picture of it and they went and made their own. So,
Yep.
So to our listeners, I'll say this, John. You should be reading something about this job every single day. You should be,
right.
Whether it's 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or watch a video, whatever. Let me ask you, as we close things out here.
Before we close things out,
go ahead,
I want to say one more thing, because
go ahead.
I'm searching around my desk here while we're talking. I saw you were doing the same thing. And there's so many resources out there. And I don't know how we can even talk about training, resources, learning, experience, et cetera, without talking about FDTN, which is Fire Department Training Network.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is Jimmy McCormick out in Indianapolis. He's got, it's not the National Fire Academy. I think he's got some kind of a variable name for it. You know what I'm saying? It's like the National Firefighting Academy. He literally has like a 20-acre site with 15 different buildings, a firehouse. He's got 3 engines, 3 trucks, his own mass service unit, radios and saws. And he trains probably a couple of thousand guys a year on 2 and 3 and 4 day classes. And it's all live fire training. They have an excellent safety record out there. Most of the buildings are built out of containers. He has a class on how to build training props with containers. You go out there and learn actually how to build the training props. But anyway, we're not getting crazy about it. FDTN, if you look that up, if you got some time to go do some hands-on training and you want to learn and he's got instructors there from Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, New Jersey, Texas, he's got them from everywhere. All great guys that know what they're doing. What an operation he's got. I can't speak too much about it. It really is another great source.
And just the fact you mentioned all those different departments, you know how much I love FDNY and your heritage, right? In Chicago. they're not all FDNY Chicago instructors, right?
No, absolutely not. No,
they're from you're bringing in different viewpoints and ideas and experiences from all over North America into one place. And Jimmy, I was just talking about it at Wichita West, my volley place, and I took a couple of guys about, oh, it's incredible. They're incredible there. So that being said, we talked about the resources. The resources are out there because how many times in the Company Office Academy do we say the good boss, the good company officers were interested, right, in a job? And you've heard me say this, you have to work your ass off nowadays to not be interested in fire service. It takes more work and effort and time to not be interested than to be interested, because it's everywhere you look, there's stuff. So John Salka has got a room full of probies. Let's do that first. You got a room full of, hey, Chief, would you come over and talk to our Academy students just 20 minutes, just give them a little wisdom from Chief Salka. When it comes to, and I think we're going to call this show, Do You Really Know Everything? I think I wrote that down earlier. Do you really know everything? What would you say to the probies about that whole, how to stay away from do you really know everything kind of, I know everything. What advice do you give them about honing their skills about this job?
I mean, you and I have said this 1,000 times to probies and even to some young officers. You know, some of my firefighters became lieutenants and captains. You see them again, or you talk to them before they leave after being promoted. And if you just strive to do what we've already said a couple of times here today, if you just strive individually, forget everybody else, forget your company, forget your mentors, forget everything. If you go into work every day, or if you're a volley firefighter and you got, one drill night or a couple of days a week that you go to drill and practice at the firehouse, if you just strive to learn something every time you go through the door. Now, if you're in the firehouse once a week plus runs as a volunteer, then that once a week might be tonight for you, might be tomorrow night for me, Wednesday night. Make sure you learn something. Don't just go in and buzz around and check the rig and talk to the guys and pull some hose and leave. Think to yourself, did I learn something new tonight? If you really just strive to do that, number one, if you just follow that one rule, you never, ever could say, I know everything, because every single time you came in, you learned something new. You learned something new when you're leaving in the morning. You say, you know what I learned last night at that job? That you don't have to do that. You can do this with the saw. You can do that with the Halligan. I mean, Bobby Morris is still out there showing people stuff with the Halligan that I find amazing. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. So the message to the probies is become a student of the game, fall in love with the job,
learn something every day.
Yeah, learn something every day. Never be satisfied. You and I actually put my notes together for an article about the bar you raise is not for anyone else. We always say we're raising the bar. The bar you raise is for yourself. You're raising the bar for, that whole, well, we raise the bar for those of, no. You're raising the bar for yourself. What do I have to do to be better? What do I have to do to be, the best at what I'm doing? And I just say it's never, ever be satisfied. Last part. All right. We're having dinner with a bunch of guys, career volunteers at a conference. We go out to dinner with them. It's just us. What do you say to the senior firefighters about this whole gaining information, knowledge, about some of the know-it-alls? What do you say? You said what you said to the probies. Now, what do you say to a senior guy that's been on the job for a while?
Well, and we do that too sometimes when we're out doing a seminar. They bring us to dinner, or we go out with a crowd somewhere else, but with a big group of guys. And what I like to ask the senior guys is, you can ask at the table sometimes, or sometimes you can ask while you're walking down the hallway with a guy. Say, how are the probies here? How are the new guys here? You getting them ready? Are they gonna get to where you are? Are they gonna be successful? And see what he says. And no matter what he says, not you got him, but if he says absolutely, we're working hard, Chief, I think they're gonna be better. That's a wonderful answer. Sometimes they're like, well, you know what? I'm not sure. These new guys, sometimes I'm saying to myself, well, guess what? That's how we're measuring you. I'm not measuring you by you. I'm measuring you by the guys that you break in. I'm measuring you by the people that follow you, right? That's a great thought, and it's a great measuring, standard. Is not measure. I'm not measuring you by your success. I'm measuring you by the success of the people that you raised, that you brought in, that you trained.
Exactly, and if you're going to be that senior guy, be that senior guy. Share. All of us have gotten better because of the people around us. All of us have gotten better because of our mentors and because of the people that shared with us. And so, be a sharer, be somebody, don't be the, throwing your resume in everybody's face person, but be the one that takes the time to train the new guys, to sit there, have a cup of coffee. I love, I love talking shop and talking tactics and how can we have done that or whatever, so on and so forth. There's a ton of people out there that have just millions of pieces of little megabytes of information shoved into their brain about this job that never get out of their brain. You know what I'm saying? That they need to share with those around them. So if you're the senior guy or gal, hey, share. We have the honor and luxury of hanging out with some pretty cool people called firefighters. And, we learn something about this job every day. You and I, you say it all the time. Look at us. We're just a couple of chooch firefighters that they can hang out with some cool people. We get to go out, have dinner with some great people, teach and hang out and share information and learn something. And people take us out on the floor and they go, and you go, God, I never thought of that particular hose. I never really, that's what you got. How many ideas, thousands of ideas have we seen out there, and we still continue to see because it's all right out in front of us.
Yep.
So, all right. Hey, so if they want to get a hold of you, two ways. First is best email, John.
Chief John Salka at gmail.com.
And I know I love your website, johnsalka.com. So johnsalka.com. I'm Chief Lasky at gmail.com, or you can go to chieflasky.com. We've redone our websites and everything else. Get a hold of us. We always ask you when we end these shows, and we'll never stop asking you to please keep the men and women of armed forces, especially right now with everything going on around the world, please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. If you're a firefighter, invite one of our brothers and sisters in blue for dinner or for lunch at the firehouse, and keep them in your thoughts and prayers as well. And we always remind you that never forgetting means just that, never forgetting. Thanks a lot. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.